and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPO, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe and
I'm Mike Rice.
And we are back to go over another weekend roundup, focusing this time on match day 26 of the CPL. And it was an action-packed weekend, and a lot of it maybe was not in the most legal of sense in terms of what action happened. We had 5 red cards in this match day. We're going to go over and talk about all of the red cards and all of the rest of the action throughout the episode, because if you thought that it couldn't get any tighter at the bottom of the league, well, this weekend has proven that it can, because it went from 2-point difference to a 1-point difference going into the last 2 match days of the season. I say it every week, but I feel like I have to reiterate, one of the most exciting ends to a CPL season, to a football season, I think I can even say, in general, for
definitely.
that final playoff spot. It is a true nail-biter there.
And with all those red cards, it seems to be getting to the players.
Yeah. It's going to be, I'm excited. The next few weeks is going to be a lot of emotions. It might get a little volatile. It might get a little spicy. It already got a little spicy this weekend, as we'll talk with the last game of the weekend. But yeah, it's going to be a very exciting time in the last couple of weeks. So if you haven't yet, strap in, because it's going to be a wild ride until the end. But before we dive into all of the action from this match day, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube under the same name, so you can see the visual side to the podcast. But let's crack on to the first match of the weekend, and arguably one of the biggest matches of the weekend because of the final playoff spots debacle that is going on right now. It was HFX Wanderers against Vancouver FC. And this one was, for Vancouver FC fans, a real heartbreaker.
Yeah.
I think one of the most heartbreaking games that I've seen for Vancouver FC, and specifically for one Callum Irving, that I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. It ended in a 1-1 for Vancouver FC. 2 red cards in this one. 1 red card for 2 yellows against Elijah Ba in the 32nd minute, and then we had another red card for HFX Wanderers. It was later in the game. It wasn't as, I guess it did affect the match a little bit, obviously, but it wasn't as huge as the one for Elijah Ball. It was Zachary Fernandez that got in the 80th minute, the last 10 minutes. But it was an exciting game, even with besides the red card, because of everything that happened throughout the match. Let's talk about Vancouver first. Because, as I just mentioned, Elijah Ba got 2 yellow cards in quick succession, and it kind of left me thinking, I don't know about you, I don't know if both of them are yellow card offenses. I feel like the second one was a yellow card offense. I don't know if necessarily the first one was. And then to also give it 3-4 minutes apart, obviously I'm not going to completely excuse Ba. When you get on a yellow, you got to tread lightly, and it felt like he treaded lightly for all of 90 seconds and then continued out.
Yeah.
But it did kind of seem to me that Ashton Gottlieb set his team up to be very physical, very aggressive, because, Halifax loves to play in front of their own fans. And when they get going in their home ground, they can beat anyone, like when they beat Forge a few weeks ago. Felt like Ashton really sent them to go and fly out of the gate, just be pretty much just super, super, super physical. James Cameron was also another player that I'm surprised he didn't get sent off after he didn't get a yellow as well, the way he was playing. But yeah, it felt like maybe they kind of overdid it, and that kind of sort of was epitomized by Elijah Ba's 2 yellow cards. But did you think it was 2 yellow cards offense, and did you think that it was the right approach from Vancouver?
Yeah, I think it was. I think the challenges he put in, he's giving the referee the chance to book him for both. They're both quite rough challenges. The second one's just late and stupid. But the first one, some referees, it's earlier in the game, some referees might let that go depending on the type of match. But because Vancouver, going out strong and physical, the referee's got to try and contain it somehow. And sometimes that's right. We'll have to give yellow cards for early on for big tackles. And I think when the way it was set up, it just gave the ref the opportunity to give him those 2 yellow cards. It was just a bit rash from him, a bit naive, I think.
Yeah, like I said, you're always gonna be allowing the referee to make those decisions, even if it is early in the game. If you're kind of starting in that tone, because I think even personally for myself, you want to, like for my coaching, we want your team to start with intensity, but there can be a little bit of going overboard, and I think maybe a little bit of that was the reason why Ilashba kind of went too hard and got those 2 yellow cards. But then afterwards, going down a 10-man, nightmare scenario for Vancouver, especially given the context of the situation. But they did actually rather well defensively. They had their backs to goal, but there were at times in the first half, especially like towards the end of the first half and the periods in the second half, where it didn't feel like Vancouver had a man down at all. They were playing quite well defensively, and then breaking in behind, and they had a couple of looks on goal, and it was actually a pretty decent performance defensively. Obviously, helped tremendously by a man of the match performance, maybe arguably one of his greatest performances in a match ever, from Captain Fantastic Callum Irving. Broke the CPL record for most saves in a match with 11 saves in just one match. That's ridiculous. And I'm sure would have been, he got a lot of plaudits. He won Player of the Week because of the performance. I believe they just announced today or yesterday. But it would have been even more if he could have kept that clean sheet all the way up until the end. And it sucks because of the way that it happened, especially when you consider Austin Ritchie's open goal miss moments before, like 30 or 45 seconds before.
What was that?
I don't know. I don't know. It looked like he was trying to maybe thread the ball for Grady McDonald instead of going for the shot. But in my mind, when you're like running down the clock, you don't want to just you want to hoof it and get it out and make Jan Filin go and try to get another ball and delay it or try to score. I don't know why he's making that kind of pass.
Jan Filin's not catching him. He's on his own. I don't know what. Like, it's just it was the most baffling thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of baffling things that we've seen in this weekend, and even in soccer in general. It reminds me of like some of the things that I've seen in other leagues as well. But yeah, that one is like, a lot of people are saying it's the worst miss of the season, which is actually funny because the only other biggest miss of the season that I can remember was also Austin Ritchie in week 1 of the CPO. When he missed an open goal. I just don't think he likes open goals. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't like the score if there's a goalie in it.
Needs a challenge.
Maybe it's just like a sporting thing. Yeah, he needs a challenge. Exactly. I think it just might be a sporting thing from him. But that will sting even more because it should have been 2-0, and instead it ended up being 1-1 in Vancouver FC. That point did temporarily, and it ended up being now permanently, at least until this coming week, put them into that 5th and final playoff spot. But it could have been even more had they held on. So I'm sure that for Vancouver FC fans, they'll be frustrated with that. But if we turn our attention now to Halifax, it kind of is a different story, obviously. But you kind of look at that last-minute goal, and you look at the stats from Halifax in that game. It's 26 total shots, 12 on target, with an XG of 2.38. And they only scored in the dying moments. That goes to show, on one hand, of course, Callum Irving, the player that he is. I think it was the podcast Down from the Pub, which is like the Halifax Wanderers podcast.
Yeah.
Put like some photos out for their podcast episode. And it had like a wanted sign of Callum Irving, who was like wanted for robbery because he robbed Halifax of 3 points. I found that really funny, but it was true, because if it wasn't for Callum Irving, Halifax should have easily won that game by 2 or 3 goals, given how many chances and opportunities they had. But even though they didn't get to put the ball into the back of the net until the very, very end, I did really like the way that specifically in the second half they kind of kicked off. Because in the first half, I feel like they might have gotten a little bit shaken up by the way that Vancouver started so physically, which is I think what Vancouver wanted. And then after the red card happened, they still didn't really impose themselves as a team with greater men until the second half. And then Zachary
Yeah.
Fernandez got that red card in the 80th minute and changed the game again. But even still, when it was 10 on 10, Halifax Wanderers still took the sort of the impetus and kept firing shot after shot and wave after wave of attacks. And I think you could say definitely deserved to get at least a point, if not all 3 points, given the situation that they've found themselves in. 45 minutes with a man up. Were you a bit disappointed maybe then with how Halifax kind of wasn't able to get it across the line, given the fact that they had like a one-man advantage for so long?
Um, I can understand I can understand the fans would be disappointed. So but the football was brilliant. It was so good to watch some of it until the final chance. But even then, it was sometimes. I mean, I texted you in this game just before Fernandez got sent off, just like Vancouver are going to do this, aren't they? Because Callum Irving was just so good. It wasn't that they were creating too many bad, lots of chances, but they were all bad chances. They had great opportunities, and it was just unbelievable the other game Callum Irving had. It was. So in one half, Patrice Geyser must be like, you're doing everything right. I do not understand why this ball isn't going in the net. So it was just baffling. I just couldn't believe it to watch it as it just carried on. And then obviously I texted you, and then straight away Fernandez gets sent off straight after. It's like, oh yeah, they're going to do this now. And the absolute noise that comes through that came through the TV screen when that goal went in, it was like,
Yeah.
That's got to be that must be the best place, the best place to be for a football fan, just to be in the Halifax end in the kitchen screaming for a win, a late equalizer.
I believe that's what you Brits call limbs. That's what that was.
Yeah.
It was pure limbs
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah, that it was blasting the goal celebration from the Wanderers grounds and from the Halifax fans after that goal. But yeah, I think Patrice Geyser, I don't think he can really say anything else to the lads. Be like, you did your absolute best. We just got stopped by almost supernatural keeper on the day in Callum Irving. It is a disappointing though the way that they conceded the penalty. I think it was quite sloppy from it was Mekadiche, who quickly turned from hero to zero in a sense after having a really good first couple of games where he goes and scores to this moment. But aside from that, where Alejandro Diaz puts the penalty away, it was all pretty much Halifax, especially towards the end of the match. And it was weird because I thought once Zachary Fernandez got sent off, I thought Vancouver FC would try to take momentum back and kind of make sure that the game was theirs and see it out till the end. But it didn't feel that way. It felt like even after Zachary Fernandez got sent off, you still saw Halifax be the team that was attacking and attacking and attacking and attacking. And then Vancouver FC, obviously with the lead, they're probably going to want to hold on to it. But I'm always one that I feel like it's better at times to attack than to just sit back and defend for like 10, 15, 20 minutes or 45, 90 minutes, however long a team could do it. It's always better. Like I do believe in attack sometimes is the best form of defense. And I feel like if Vancouver FC was a little braver in the last 10 minutes, they might have been able to avoid those kind of heartbreaks. Obviously, had Richie's chance gone in, it would be a completely different story we're talking about here. But for Halifax, it shows, again, we talked about it last week, the spirit that they have right now going into it. It's just, they're so unified, they're so together. When you hear them talk to each other, when you hear them talk to media about the team right now, when you hear Patrice talk, it's so much focus on the team and on the unity and the spirit and on the fight. that you can't help but be moved by it, and you really saw it on display in the second half there from Halifax. And so I felt like it was a bit of karmic justice, I guess, in the sense that Vitor Diaz
Yeah.
got the equalizer there. I did feel a little bit bad for Grady McDonald because it was sort of his fault that goal went in without, because he didn't really properly clear the cross when it kind of bobbled in. But aside from that, like, there's not much that Vancouver FC could have really done. They were defending so valiantly with 10 men for well over an hour of game time. And, it was just, in the end, it wasn't meant to be. But a really good match overall, and great for the neutrals, especially given what it allowed to create in terms of the table.
Exactly.
Because, like we mentioned, there's 1 point in it. Vancouver and Halifax are just a point away right now with 2 games to play. And that's going to bring me to the new little feature that we're doing for this episode, which is, what does that mean for them? Because for pretty much all of the 3 out of the 4 matches, it has big implications. Halifax, right now, in terms of the playoff scenarios, they have 2 matches remaining. They go away to Cavalry, and then they host York United. Meanwhile, Vancouver host Valour in another massive match before going away to Ottawa, which might actually be easier than what it looks like on paper given Ottawa's form. But we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it's they both have difficult matches. Halifax with Cavalry and York, both of them being in the top 4, you could say definitely have a little bit tougher than Vancouver. But I feel like, especially given the way that this game went, and we joked about it at the beginning, but I think it actually might very well be a big factor, is how well discipline goes into into these teams for the last 2 matches. Because if you start to get players suspended because they have too much emotion, because they're kind of maybe taking on too much more than they can handle, then you're going to miss them for the big games. Like, if somebody like, Vasco Fry gets a red card against Valour, then you're missing him for, the last match against Ottawa, and potentially even in the playoffs if you do make it. So I feel like discipline is going to be a huge factor going into this one. But Mike, which one of the 2, if you had to put your money on it right now, and we're not looking at Pacific and we're not looking at your beloved Valour, if you had to put money on it right now between these 2, who would you pick to go into the last playoff spot?
From the way they're playing, I still go Halifax. I still think they're the better team, but they do have the tough thing. And I can see Vancouver should get a win in one of those games. And the issue Halifax have got is they need to pick up. They need to then win both, or at least be unbeaten, like get a win and a draw probably. And they've just got the harder trip going all the way over the Cavalry, who had an easier game, so well rested. They're not flying across the country, so it's going to be tough for them. And York, just don't know with York. So I still think Halifax are the better team out of the 4 that are down there that are fighting for that last spot. But yeah, their fixtures, it's going to be really difficult for them to get some points in these last 2 games.
Yeah. And I think I'm agreeing with you there. I think I would lean more Halifax. It is tough because, like you mentioned, they have a tougher schedule. But also, if you look at recent form, Halifax are unbeaten their last 5 games. They have only 1 win, but 4 draws. You look at Vancouver FC's record, on the other hand, and it's not as nice. They have this one is actually, I think, their first draw in the they drew Cavalry, obviously, so they've had 2 back-to-back draws, but before that they were winless they are winless in 6, but they had a losing streak of 4 straight matches. So definitely on form, I'd say Halifax are greater. But you're right in that Vancouver FC have, I think, a bit of an easier matchup. Nevertheless, I would say that Halifax, probably for me, are the ones that still are favorites to get that spot, at least between these 2 teams. But they weren't the only teams that had big matches in this weekend with big implications. let's move on to the second game where we talk about another team that's vying for that 5th place playoff spot, who was in that 5th place playoff spot until this result, and that was Pacific FC losing 4-1 to Cavalry FC. And if we want to talk about what was he doing, as we were with Austin Ritchie earlier, that does not hold a candle to what Emil Gazdov was doing in the 3rd minute of the match. For those who didn't see it, it was an overhead ball that looked like, I think it was Jay Herdman that might have gone onto the end of it.
Running onto it, yeah.
Yeah, and Emil Gazdov rushed out of his box, which is fine, to try to go and intercept. But then for some reason, and I haven't found an explanation for it. I don't think he's been mentioned. I don't think James Merriman tried to explain it. No one has said anything about it. For some reason, got out, and instead of trying to use his head or his knee or heck, even his shoulder, drop a shoulder, he decided to throw his hand up, thinking maybe he was still in the box, and just stop the ball dead. Yeah. And given the fact that Jay Herdman was, going to be through on goal, immediately the referee goes and reaches for his back pocket and gives him a red card. And I don't know what Emil Gazdov was thinking when he was like, "What do you mean?" He was like complaining to the ref. He was caught dead to rights. Like, I don't think you can complain at all with that. You're like, I'm surprised he wasn't more head in his hands, what have I done, and more still sort of complaining to the ref. I mean, it was just an absolutely mind-boggling decision.
Yeah, really odd. He's misjudged the ball, run out, and that little punch randomly. He's not knowing what to do. I guess the only thing he's probably complaining about is that he's hoping for a yellow because it's early, but still, it's really, really like that was Sunday League goalkeeping, like the
genuinely. No, even if the goalkeeper, even if my goalkeeper Sunday League does that, I'll be like, "What the hell are you thinking?" Like, there's no excuse for that. Genuinely, it was So it put Pacific in a really tough spot from pretty much the off. They had to play 87 plus minutes with at least 10 men. They eventually got to 9 men after Chichetti did a ridiculous second yellow. Might as well talk about it. I mean, okay, the first yellow, whatever. We know in the modern game you can't kick a ball away. You can't, even if you're frustrated, if you smash a ball against the board, if you kick the ball away in frustration, you're gonna get a yellow card. That's just the way it is in the modern game.
Yeah,
and it's surprising to me that some players still don't sort of understand that. Like, if we saw Thiago Coimbra get a second yellow card for kicking the ball away a little on the free kick, that should have been a sign, a learning experience for everybody in the league to understand. But no, Chichetti got that yellow card, and then the second yellow card against Ali Musi, where Ali Musi is nowhere near the net. And I understand he's kind of running through. He got past you. You want to stop him. But he just kicked his leg, like he didn't even try to mask it. He didn't even try to mask it to go for like the slide tackle or something. Try to show it's a 50-50 ball. He just kicked at Ali Musi's leg. He said, "I'm done. I'm not running after you. I'd rather just knock you down. I'm over it. I'm over it." It was genuinely so ridiculous. It reminds me of, like when Bernadeschi for Toronto FC got his red card. I think it was last weekend, where it was, again, a second yellow. He just kicked out at his man and said, "I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore." He went straight down the tunnel. Chichetti basically did the exact same thing. And it's just like, it was like, I understand that in this time of the season with the stakes so high, we've never seen it before in the league, emotions will run high. But at a professional level, maybe I'm asking too much, but at a professional level, I feel like you should be having a better control of your emotions and your self-discipline than to be doing that. And it's not just Cecere. We're going to talk about in the last game another kind of ridiculous
Well, it was
red card
Fernandez the
offense.
game before as well.
Yeah, Zachary Fernandez as well, with
Yeah.
the push and everything. It's just, I understand, it's a lot of emotion, a lot of testosterone in the air.
Mm.
But at the same time, lads, like, you're getting like paid, you're professional, like you got to have a little bit of control. But yeah, the fact that Pacific ended with 9 men, there was only ever going to go one way afterwards. I think they did pretty well in the first half. Cavalry weren't really off to the races all that much throughout the first half, but you could only do so much, I think, as Pacific. They did what they could after getting that penalty. Moses Dyer, very clever, getting there before Marco Carducci. Though I've seen some people say that wasn't a penalty. I think it was a penalty. I think he was just being clever. Do you think that it was a penalty, or did you think that Carducci kind of, like, he kind of asked for too much and kind of leaned into Carducci too much?
I think it's a penalty just because that's how football is. Like, goalkeepers, like, they go near someone, if they go down by the feet, if they get the feet, it's gone. Like, it's hard, it's tough, but that's just how it is. Like, I can understand how a goalie might find that infuriating.
Yeah, because Carducci was beside himself, complaining to the referee there. But they brought it back to 1-1. Going into the break, I thought it was
like he's been scoring goals all season.
I know, super little confident there. It was, I rate it. I don't think I'd have the medal for that, but no, fair enough. But yeah, I feel like, going into halftime, if you were James Merriman going into halftime, you think, with already the nightmare scenario that you're put into, the team is doing pretty well. And you probably just say, keep going, keep fighting, make sure you're structured, and then let's see what we can get out of this game. I don't think he was anticipating the second half that turned out to be what was reality, a very one-sided affair.
Yeah, Cavalry just, a few changes, and they were just back on track. And it's hard, like, you can keep going for a while, a man down, but a team like Cavalry, that is just going to make you work and tire you out. And once they get themselves on form as well, and they get themselves ticking, it was all done. Like, you just can't keep up with them. And Chesky had a really good game, got his goals that he deserved. Herdman's had a great, really good derby debut for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, dream debut for him, really, with the goal and the assist. Really well played. I think he got player of the match as well after the game for that. Which shows, I mean, I've seen him from when he was here with WFC too. Like, he's a talent. He's a talent that is at that level, at the CPL level, maybe even more. I feel like he can definitely develop even more if he stays at Cavalry for next season. I think he could develop even more into a very, very good player for the league. But yeah, I think, like you mentioned, is the few changes that they did at half. Tommy Wilden Jr. really said to the guys, we got to take advantage of this if we want to try to take second. And he brought on another former WFC2 alumni in Lowell Wright, and the very physical, the ever-present Charlie Trafford, and then one of my favorite players in the league, and I think this season probably the best right back in the league, Fraser Aird. And those three changes completely changed the match for Cavalry. I think, with Lowell Wright coming in, and he kind of gives a little bit different at the striker position. You have Charlie Trafford as well, who's more, like I said, he's very physical. I think that was a very underrated substitute by Tommy Wilden Jr. because, like, looking back at the game, you can see that he's just stopping everything in that midfield. He's just there to hound Pacific players so they can't break through. He's fighting for the ball. He's a player that I think can change a game in subtle ways, and that's why I really like Charlie Trafford. And then Fraser Aird. I don't think you can choose a player who has a better cross of the ball than him right now in the league. Those three plus everybody else just really changed the game. And even at the end, the change of Mirinuk, I think.
Mironjuk.
Mironjuk, that's the one. I completely butchered his name. Mironic did well as well for the last one for Tobias Warchowski. What a finish from Tobias in that one. Just I love
Yeah,
that finish. Just kind of like curling it first time into that corner where it just like skids across
yeah,
the pitch. Oh, it's such an aesthetically pleasing goal to see. But yeah, it was a fantastic display, a little right with a little cherry on top with a great finish at the end. But I think as soon as the second goal went in, the heads just dropped from Pacific.
yeah,
Everything that I think James Merriman was trying to communicate at halftime and everything, it just completely dropped from the players' minds. And then it just became a little bit frantic, a little bit disorganized, and then it was all too easy for Cavalry to just trounce them. And then, which I'm sure will be very frustrating for James Merriman because they showed in the first half, for the first 42 minutes, that they were able to hold on, but then it just went all by the wayside, and yeah, it gave Cavalry a big win, their first big win. I was going through the history books on this one, on this stat here. I had a little bit of time, so this morning, more time than I thought. So I went through some of my favorite stats. But this is the first time the Cavalry have scored 4 or more goals since July 22nd, 2023, when they won 5-1 against Vancouver in Langley. I was there for that match. And actually, they have been able to get, I think, a big result, like a 4 or 5 goal game, once every season, I believe. I think going back to like, but maybe it didn't happen in the pandemic year, but at least like in 2024, 2023, 2022, and I think 2021, they had at least one game where they scored a lot of goals,
yeah,
which is surprising because we were talking about how Cavalry doesn't really like to score a lot of goals,
yeah,
but they're just really good at winning games. This game obviously helped to have, 11 men versus 9, or versus 10 for the majority of the game, and then 9 towards the
yeah.
end. But still, it was impressive how Cavalry finally showed that they can be a lethal team that punishes teams that might not be playing so well.
Yeah, oh, yeah, they got, but it's gonna see. I mean, it's against 10 men, it's a little bit different, isn't it? But we'll just see how they can, if they can get that second spot and take on Forge in the in the first playoff. That's a repeat of last year, just down at Tim Hortons.
Yeah, just a swap there. Um, that would be a really good match. If
Yeah,
Cavalry do stay second, which we can talk about it a little bit, but that'll be a really good match. And very selfishly, I am sort of hoping, especially since Forge, like whoever loses gets the second chance. Even though I have a lot of loyalty and a lot of love for Forge, I kind of want Cavalry to win for the semifinal match, just so I can go to a CPL final, because it's
yeah,
much cheaper and much easier for me to get to Calgary than it is to get all the
yeah,
way to Ontario to Hamilton. So might be rooting for Cavalry just for that reason. But that is if they get for second. Because now as we move on to what does it mean for them section of this game, Pacific are now in 6th place, equal with Vancouver FC, because they lost this match. Vancouver FC got that 1 point differential back after their draw against
yeah,
Halifax. And very frustrating for them because they couldn't take advantage of the fact that both, playoff rivals, Halifax and Vancouver, dropped points. And then later, obviously, Valour also dropped points.
yeah,
So Pacific will be even more frustrated that they didn't take advantage of that, because they could have been not far in a way, but at least a little bit of breathing room from
yeah,
the rest of the 3 going into the last 2 games. But you look at their schedule as well. The last 2 games, they go away to York United, and then they host the newly crowned 2024 Shield champions, Forge FC. And I would say, looking at all of the matches, we'll talk about Valors as well, but even with them, looking at all of the remaining 2 games for all of the teams that are involved in this playoff fight, I think Pacific have the toughest, because York, yes, they haven't been fantastic as they were earlier, but they're still a tough team to kind of beat. They are a team that still defensively is difficult to break down, and obviously we'll talk about the star boy that they have in their ranks right now.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy match to go away to York United. And then obviously hosting Forge. We're going to talk about how Forge, even though they've clinched the shield for the first time in their history, small claps for Forge for yet another trophy. They are not going to take it easy. At least that's what Bobby Smirniota said. He said we're not going to treat these last two matches like training matches. So Pacific are real difficult games to come. Two really tough tests for them. And add to that, because of the red cards, they don't have Cicchetti for the next match. And for Gazdov, I don't think the disciplinary report has come out at the time of recording. But I believe that Gazdov could be out, obviously for a game, but potentially even more, depending on what the disciplinary report, what the people, the adjudicators decide. So, Cicchetti, maybe not as big as a piece, but I mean, Emil Gazdov has arguably been like one of the best keepers in the league this season, especially at the beginning, the first half of the season. Not to say Sean Melvin isn't a good backup. I think he is still CPL quality, but it's, Emil Gazdov is still, I think, going to be a big miss for them. So they're without two, good players, arguably starters, and they have to go to those difficult places. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you think the Pacific still have what it takes to be able to take that fifth spot from the other three teams that are right around?
Kind of. Just because York is such a funny team. They've got this chance that the York struggle again going forward, and if they can get, like, if Moses Dyer can get on form, then they might get a few chances to try and get something there. But at the same time, they could just get, like, York could turn it on and obliterate them. So I find that one a really hard one to call. I just think that one could really go either way. And yeah, you never know on the last day against Forge. Like, I know they don't want to treat them as training matches, but it's the last game of the season. You might want to give a couple of players a little bit of a rest. But I mean, I wouldn't expect too much, or they've still got to travel over there. So I think Pacific are they're the team that I kind of believe will let me down more. Where I think they'll get something, but they probably won't.
You know what? I like that because this battle for the fifth place spot is kind of turning into whoever is like the least bad right now. It's not who wants it more, it's whoever's the least bad. And I feel like that's a great way of going about it. It's not who will impress me the most, it's who is the least likely to disappoint me. I think that's what it's turning into right now between all four teams. All four teams have their problems, all four teams have their issues, but somebody has to finish fifth,
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think you're right in that, it's one thing, to say that we're not going to take these matches lightly, but it's another thing to actually do it, especially with one eye on the playoffs. And then, York United, you don't know which York United you're going to get right now, which is a throwback to us last year, talking about York United. So yeah, it's a difficult one to call for Pacific right now. But looking at Cavalry, they are now 2 points above Ottawa right now in the table in second place. They're on 42 points. Ottawa on 40 points. And looking at their schedule as well, you have a game where they host Halifax, which is not an easy game, but at home they've been pretty decent at Atco Field. You could see them getting a result there, at least maybe a draw, if not a win. And then they go away to Valour, who, I mean, all of these teams, even though they're bottom half teams, they're fighting for that final playoff spot. So they're giving their 110%. I don't think there's any team right now that is as people like to say on the beach in the season right now, where they have like nothing to play for. Everybody has something to play for right now, so there really isn't any easy matches. But as matches go, you would say the Cavalry do have a bit of an easier sort of schedule than some of the other teams. So they look probably the most likely team to finish second. And then if they do, then we get that tasty, revenge match between them and Forge FC. But I really do like that Cavalry are finally starting to show, and I hope it continues in the last two matches here, how dominant they can be once they actually put the ball into the back of the net.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be tough. Cause like you say, both these teams need something that they're playing. They're both going to be fighting. Whether Valour is still fighting at the end, we'll see that on the last game of the last day of the season, whether they can still make it. But Halifax definitely, this match will be, that should be pretty exciting. They've had some good ones in the past. So yeah, it's going to be. It's quite hard to tell. It's quite hard to in each one. I think it's the romantic in us say follow the underdogs, wanting them to play. That makes you still think they could get something. But Cavalry have been they're playing as one of the best teams in the league. That's undoubtable. So it's you should see them doing a decent job here.
Yeah, and you're right. It would. Bias aside, it would be a spectacular story if Valour managed to get the 5th place if they beat Cavalry at home. But even with everything in the line, as we segue to the third match, they've shown that against good teams, they struggle to win. Because this past weekend, they hosted Forge FC, who were on the cusp of winning the Shield and now have won the Shield thanks to a 1-0 narrow win against Valour in Winnipeg. And I'll say it. It wasn't like the most amazing win from Forge. Valour, to their credit, did quite well for the most part. They just kind of switched off in one play. But Forge are so good. They're so lethal that all they need is that one moment. When I saw the result, when I saw that they were champions, immediately I thought of the meme as of Thanos, just I am inevitable. Forge right now in the CPL under Bobby Smirniotis are inevitable. It doesn't matter if it's whatever happens throughout the season, they will finish the season with a trophy in hand. It's just what they do. It's just what they do. It was I think you can definitely say it was a professional display because it shows Forge the just the level that they're at, where I don't think they even got out of saying that they didn't get out of second gear might be harsh. I don't think they got out of third gear, but they still managed to get the job done and clinch the Shield. If that's Forge on a so-so day, I'm scared for what it looks like when Forge are on it, when Forge are firing on all cylinders, because in the form they're on right now is crazy. They're just playing so well, and in this match, they started a little quiet. They allowed Valour to get into it little bit by little bit, but then they just needed that one moment, and then they got it. And after that, it was just professional the whole way through. It was just assured from Forge, and you can't help but admire it and also maybe slightly hate it because of how good they are. They're just so good. But obviously for you might have a little bias against them given that they faced Valour. What did you make of that performance from them?
Yeah, I mean, players like Bally Vanguard, these great moments. Jensen and Becker, they're just working really well together in midfield, and defensively they were really strong throughout. Kalila looks like a really decent goalie. He's been He's had a good year since coming in. Was it LAFC 2, wasn't it? I think it was. They came
Yeah, it was
across from.
LAFC 2 came in.
Yeah. So yeah, they had decent performances throughout the team, and again, but like you say, Valour got into it, so it wasn't the walkover. It wasn't an easy game for them. I thought Kwemi again was brilliant. It's just every time similar to Baddy Banga in a way, just like as soon as he gets it, it's like, right, I'm taking someone on one-on-one and going for it. And the two of them were good fun on either end of the pitch to watch. Like the two of them really were infuriating fullbacks, just absolutely just roasting them at times. It was good. I mean, Mordekudis, how that volley went higher, like at the
Oh, I
last
know. Oh, that was
if that's
so
gone in, who
frustrating.
knows? Then maybe that kicks Forge on and they go and win 5-1, or maybe Valour keep going. You don't know. But yeah, I think it's another one where Valour were decent. I thought Mla first touch coming on couldn't keep his volley down. They made quite a lot of chances, which in some ways is quite positive and it's good, but at the same time you've lost. At the same time you haven't scored. So, and as much as you want to see improvements in teams, when you're down to the third to last game of the season, you just need points. Doesn't matter what it looks like. I think I thought they played well. I thought Forge just looked like champions throughout, and they got a few moments where they were bottom of the ropes. But like you say, yeah, this wasn't the 5-star Forge that you'll see in a game. This was not just a team that was just grinding it out. I think more than anything at times in their way of still being quite flary and exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's tough because like you mentioned, like a Valor played pretty well. I think that the plan that they went out with, you could see that they were being very pragmatic about it. They kind of set up in like a 4-4-2, and they were defending quite deep. They were allowing Forge to have the ball. They weren't kidding themselves. They weren't gonna
No.
try to play Forge off the park, because you pretty much can't, especially on the form that they're on with the quality they have. You can't play them off. So I really liked that Phil Santos came with a more pragmatic, realistic approach, and it did well. And it was literally like, I feel like after the match, you look at the Mordekudis miss, and you look at the one big chance that Forge had with Jensen, and there's the answer. There's a difference. One team has loads of difference makers that can be clinical, can change a game in just one moment, and you have another team like Valor that are still kind of snuffing at chances. They're kind of, they get overwhelmed at times, and you have moments of doubt and you have moments of certainty, and they start to panic a bit, and the structure kind of goes, and it's a different kind of game at that point. And I feel like those are things that you can't really do all that much about. I think if I was Phil Dos Santos, obviously I'm disappointed that you couldn't get at least a point, but there's a lot of positives from that game that I think will help them in the last two matches. And if they manage to somehow clinch fifth, help them to try to go, as deep as they can into the playoffs. But yeah, I don't know if you can ask too much more from Valor, given how strong Forge are, because it's Forge or Forge, right? Like they are the bar in the league. Like they're setting the bar. They are the bar. They are the bar that everyone's trying to get to. They are there. They keep just pushing it a little bit higher and a little bit higher and a little bit higher every season. You think teams are catching up, and then you see Forge just kind of just scooch a little bit further away, so they still maintain that kind of distance between the rest of the teams. And it's just it's just like, what can you do? It's Forge. It's just it's Forge right now.
It's just if this result was in the first half of the season, you'd be like, Valor looking good. Like, this is good signs. But when playoffs are about, like, you're hanging on like the skin of your teeth, and then that is all it comes back to, is just the points. So.
Yeah, that is true. Unfortunately, the timing of it and everything is at a point where as many positives that you want to take away, the one thing that you needed to take away was 3 to maybe 1 point, and instead you
Yeah.
got nothing, which is unfortunate for Valor. But for Forge, one I really did like that. Like I've seen sort of this narrative being pushed, and I do like it, of this kind of like passing of the torch moment that's going on between Noah Jensen and Kyle Becker, because we saw a few weeks ago
Mm.
when Kyle Becker wasn't there, Noah Jensen kind of stepped in and became that Becker role and did really well for Forge. And now Bobby Smyrnios is playing both of them together to the point where Tristan Borges, who was arguably player of the season for the first half of the season, you know,
Mm.
I think he was injured in this case, so though it wasn't like a tactical decision, but nevertheless, he's coming in and doing as well as a job as Tristan Borges, and
Mm.
he's playing that role really well. And it does kind of feel like Jensen might be the natural heir for Kyle Becker once Kyle Becker calls it quits, which, let's be honest, might not be that far away. He came into the league in his later 20s, and I think he's 34 right now, I
Mm.
believe, in age. And with a player of his quality, you're gonna see him, be good for a while. It's not even about the legs. Yes, he is 34. I checked.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like eventually Bobby and Forge might start looking for what the next era will look like, maybe under a completely different coach. But and I feel like Noah Jensen is that player right now, at least from what they have, that you could look and be like, if Kyle Becker ever hangs up his boots, Jensen could slot in, and with the amount of time that he's had to learn under Becker, and the amount of time that he's had to be sort of his like student in a sense, when Becker being the
Mm.
master, it kind of feels like it's then it would be a seamless transition.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice being a Forge fan, isn't
Mike's just tired of talking about Forge. Fair enough, Mike. Fair enough. We can move.
It all lines up. Then so we're like, we questioned it at the beginning of the year, like with big players moving on, and what these replacements are they going to keep them at that level? And yeah, it just does, doesn't it? They know what they're doing, so well organized, so well run, and they've got them so like they're prepared. They're much more prepared above 80% of this league about what they're doing next year and what they're doing in 2 years' time. Like it's just really, really well organized. There's no huge sweeping changes like plenty of teams who are bringing in sort of 10, 11 players each year.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just. And it's funny because I was thinking about it just now. I'm pretty sure we said, we always say the Forge, this might be the year where they don't do well, but this might actually be the year.
Yeah.
We say it, never doubt Forge, but we always get brave
No.
enough to start doubting Forge. And then the same thing happens every season. No matter how much they look shaky, they always find a way to come back. But anyway, enough about Forge. Congratulations on the shield and everything. But let's get back to, the real story, which is the playoff picture. But no, not even. The fourth match has nothing to do with the playoffs. Let's just move on to the fourth match then of Atletico Ottawa against York United. The only match that didn't include somebody in that playoff match. So
Yeah.
arguably one of the games that, if it wasn't for the kind of spicy comments that happened after the match, it might not have held as much attention compared to the other games. But because it wasn't just the spicy comments that were made afterwards. Also, the performance of one 16-year-old wonder kid from York United and Shola Jimo made this game a lot more worthwhile to discuss. So let's start with Shola Jimo, because he got the only goal in the game as York United beat Atletico Ottawa by 1-0. Shola Jimo got the goal, and it was a special goal for a special player.
Yeah.
He has been carrying York United lately. And York United have been they haven't been playing all that great. They're looking tired, they're looking flat.
Mm.
and leave it to this 16-year-old to be like, don't worry,
No.
guys, I got
Yeah.
this, and just carries this entire team on his back. Just the
Yeah.
goal was probably the best one that he scored so far. Just works
Really well
so
taken.
hard, shows determination to win that
Yeah.
ball after a loose pass back, gets it, like traps the ball well, jinx the two defenders, fakes left, goes right, and just coolly places that shot into the side netting. It's just chef's kiss goal. It just it's a mature finish. It's a finish that you would expect
Yeah.
out of like at least a 23-year-old, a 24-year-old, no striker that's been around the block. But this kid's 16. This kid scored that
Yeah.
goal and then went to, I don't know, calculus the next day in high school or whatever. Like he's still a kid and he's scoring goals like
Yeah.
this. It's spectacular to watch. It's one another of the many reasons why this league is incredible. Is for things like that. A 16-year-old just putting on a show at the professional level.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's mad how for so long this York team were man up, and it's just they didn't get anything. I think was Shola shot was the only shot on target they had throughout the whole game. I think I got trying to remember, like trying to look back and thinking about it. I've got the stats in front of me, but they barely created anything with
Yeah, that was their only shot on
Ottawa.
target.
Yeah. I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, when Ottawa had just the one themselves, so it wasn't the most exciting of matches after that red card. But yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah, like such an exciting young talent. Like, just yeah, there's credit to like York and Ben Him more for like seeing what he can do and trusting and giving him the confidence to go out and do it. It's done a lot for him, and yeah, really exciting for neutrals around the league to see like players like this making their way up already even at such a young age.
Yeah, and I love it because last season we were talking about TJ Tahid, and now this season we're talking about Shola Jimo, which only makes you think, which young talented player at 16, 17
Yeah,
years old is going to take the stage in 2025 and in
exactly.
2026?
Yeah,
Like they're starting to set a precedent for young players. Is like, if you're good enough, you'll get to play at this level. You'll get to get pro experience and you'll get to kickstart your career at a super, super young age. And it's something that I think sets it apart from other leagues and other sports in general in North America, is that it's allowing these young players that are still in high school to be able to go and ball out in front of thousands of people at a professional level. You don't have to wait until a player is out of college at 21, 22 years old. No, these are 16-year-olds that are playing against
yeah.
grown men. Grown men. I remember me at 16. I would not be able to square up against, like an Amir Didic. Well, are you kidding me? At
Exactly.
16 years old, he'd squash me like a
Yeah,
bug. Like it's ridiculous how these players are like. That's what I love. It's like you see TJ and you see, Shola Jimo, and you see a lot of these other exceptional young talent players that are on those contracts. Just the bravery that they show, the maturity that they show at such a young age. And yeah, in a lot of ways, they're still raw. Obviously, they're 16, but they have a lot of like the mentality aspects down. And if you can continue to have that, with their feet kind of placed on the ground, have a good support group around them, and then just grow them as professionals, then by 18, 19, they're already ready to be world beaters. Like TJ Tahid and Shola Jimo, these are players that 3-4 years down the line, maybe even before, we're going to start to see them play for the national team. And we can say that they started as 16-year-olds balling out in the CPL. That's amazing. Like for me, like I look at that and I just think that's the whole point of the league. And that's why, like, I have no stake in the game in a match like this between Ottawa and York United.
no,
But still,
exactly.
I
Yeah,
found myself so happy just because of a moment like that, because of what it means for him, what it means for York United, but also what it means for the league and what
yeah,
it's building towards. So yeah, fantastic for Shola Jimo. Can't wait to see him, continue to ball out. It needs to be said, York need to help him out. They
yeah.
can't keep relying on a 16-year-old to
No,
bail them out. Obviously, you know, in the game against Valour, got the only goal. Then they didn't score they didn't score any goals in the last 2 games. Finally scored a goal, and guess who? It was Shola again. They need to help
Yeah.
him out because it can't
Yeah.
just be all him. But with him, they have a little bit of that X factor going into the playoffs. And I think
Mm.
that allows them to be like, you never know. Like, they might not look that great, but Jimo might just decide, I'm taking it over. And he might flip a game on its head in scoring a goal or having that moment of magic. So I feel like if they just help him a little bit, they'll really improve their
Yeah.
chances of going deep into the playoffs. But yeah, fantastic from Shola Jimo. Moving on to Ottawa, and we'll talk again about ill discipline because they got another first half red card in this match because of a little bit of silliness from Lieberman Torres. I think there was a little bit of chirping between a couple of players, between a York United player and between Lieberman Torres, where I forget who it was specifically. I don't know if it was Martinez or who it was, but something was said after like a little bit of a foul,
Yeah.
and
He's
Lieberman
lucky.
Torres got straight up and just kind of like just like a quick
Yeah.
little jab of the head. And obviously, when you get like a player's gonna flop like a fish after that because
Yeah.
you just
Exactly. Yeah.
you, it's
So
not pretty,
stupid.
but it's the game. The game is the
Yeah.
game, and just what is the referee gonna do? He saw you in plain broad daylight headbutt another player's head. There's only one response to it: a red card.
Mm.
And in such an important match for Ottawa, where it could potentially, you know, especially with Cavalry winning their match, keep you in second place and not kind of cede the
Mm.
position to Cavalry with a tough couple of games in the build-up. It was a game of such magnitude to just completely lose your head. I know he's a young player, but he's only 22 years old. But once again, lads, you're at a professional level.
If you want to be a
You
professional,
gotta
yeah.
keep your head a little bit. It
Mhm.
was just a ridiculous red card. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, just stupid. Yeah, it's same like why people do this. I don't get. Like, yeah, you can be annoyed, but I don't get what. Yeah, like we know it's a red every time. Like, it's just stupid.
Yeah. And I think the frustrating part was that afterwards, because I think York United started pretty okay in the match. I didn't think they were like fantastic, but they brought some energy. They started to put some pressure on York United. It looked level, if not slightly, in favor of Atletico Ottawa in the first 15 to 20 minutes. But then that red card
Mm.
happened, and then Atletico Ottawa kind of, went back into their old ways of having to be more defensive, of having to be
Mm.
structured. And obviously, when you're a man down, you can't be super attacking, free flowing, very,
No,
very like
yeah,
risky. Obviously, you have to be a little bit more pragmatic. But still, you're a man down. This is a must-win game. You got to give a little bit more than what I think they showed after that red card in the first half specifically. They didn't really have any heart, any spark, there's no flashes. There was nothing really else about them in that first half. Second half, it got a little bit better. They had that chance, I think, halfway through the second half of Ruben Del Campo, where he just about missed. And that was it right before Shola Jimo's goal. Like, that was the only chance that I can think of before York's goal where they looked like they were ready to attack. And I don't know if it's, again, maybe I'm asking too much because they have 10 men, but it's also
yeah,
considering they're Ottawa, right? They're like,
yeah,
they're Ottawa 2024. They have these incredible players. They should be doing more, even with
yeah,
10 men. If Vancouver FC, who haven't been doing great, can almost get a win, and even against Valour, they did get a win with 10
yeah.
men, then as Atletico Ottawa, you should at least be giving me a little bit more where it makes it feel like, yeah, you can still win this game. Because even with that Del Campo chance, I never thought that Ottawa were going to win that game. I thought it was either going to be ended as a draw or only a matter of time before York United scored.
Yeah, it just felt like a 0-0 for like this game. I mean, it's two decent defensive teams. Like they've both. I mean, Ottawa conceded 31, York 32. Like defensively, they can be good, decent, and also then like you say, shrunk back into being they're sitting back dealing with it. But this team's just it's missing something like this, like how it's running. Like I can it does feel like Cargo's getting a bit stressy, a little bit worried about what's going on because chances aren't being taken at the moment. They've scored a decent amount of goals this year, but recently it just hasn't clicked, and you've got lots of players who are struggling in front of goal. Del Campo doesn't seem. I can't. Maybe I'm getting this mistaken, but he hasn't been anywhere near as prolific as he was at the first half of the season. Anyway, still waiting. Tablas struggling in front of goal. Ollie Bass there. Like players aren't scoring, aren't looking confident up there, and they're not looking particularly fluid at times going forward. So it's a strange one. Like you say, with the players they brought in, they would have been expecting to not be in a fight for second place. I mean, it's 1 point between them and York going into the end of the season. Last two games, you wouldn't have picked that at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, no, it's surprising because I'm pretty sure you put them as your regular season champions, right? In your predictions.
Yeah, I thought they would be. Yeah.
So yeah, evidently they have been disappointing more than just one person in terms of their performance. And I hate to say it, but you kind of have to look at Carlos Gonzalez because of that. That's one of the things that we did talk about before the season is that you can have you can have a super car with all of the bits and bobs, with all of the newest tech, with all of the most expensive thing. But if the person driving it isn't, at that quality, then it's never going to, be the fastest car around. A car is only as good as its driver. A team really is only as good as its coach. And Carlos Gonzalez, I don't know if, especially towards the end of seasons, has been that great of a coach. There's actually, I was reading reactions from this game because I saw a lot of people being angry about it, specifically Atletico Ottawa fans. And Patrick Gibson from the Capital City Supporters Group wrote a little player rankings thing where he literally talked about Lieberman Torres and said the rest doesn't matter because this guy literally ruined it for us. But he did mention that Atletico Ottawa has a less than desirable record under Carlos Gonzalez going into the months of September and October. Since he's been in charge of Atletico Ottawa, they've had only 4 wins, 10 draws, and 7 losses in the final 2 months of the regular season under Carlos Gonzalez. And that does not bode well. We obviously saw what happened last season in extra time, and now it feels like it might not be as dramatic as last season, but it feels even more disappointing than last season because of the team that he got. We talked about it. This is a team that had to succeed. They had to succeed. They had to finish the season with some silverware because of how much money they were spending on, the salary cap for these players. I can only imagine what compensation is like and everything. They needed to succeed. And unless they go on an incredible run in the playoffs, it's not looking that likely. And especially considering that right now, Ottawa could finish as low as 4th place because York United could pass them, given that Ottawa have to go to Forge in their next match. They have to go away to Forge, and then they host what will probably be a desperate Vancouver FC, and they don't have a great home record either. So it's looking pretty rough for Ottawa. They were nails on to finish first for half the season. They looked like, okay, you might not finish first, but you're looking like you're going to finish second. And right at the end, right at the finish line, they might slip down as far down as 4th. I mean, that's gotta be like a point of concern for the Atletico Ottawa board looking towards Carlos Gonzalez. Surely.
Yeah. I mean, we said, like, he was such a defensively minded coach. They've given him all the weapons he could ask for, and it's struggling again, like, to really kick them on and to get out of slumps. They just really struggles. So yeah, I can't imagine he'll be here if he doesn't get if he doesn't win the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be tough for them. And listen, I understand that there's a lot of mind games that have to go that managers like to play with, especially when the team is under
Yeah.
pressure. I feel like one of the classic things that managers do is that they try to put the pressure on themselves and deflect it off of the players. And that's why sometimes managers like to have a little bit of antics. Some people were saying that Carlos Gonzalez was doing that earlier when he donned his tinfoil hat and started to take little shots at the league where he got fined for. I think we might have seen something similar after the match on this one, because there were some spicy comments from both managers in the post-match press conference. Carlos Gonzalez was asked about, it's the moments of concern and against a team like York United, to lose against a team like York United. And Carlos Gonzalez, very, like, with a straight face and it didn't look with like much malice. It felt like he was just stating facts in his mind.
Right.
Said that no, not with York United. They're one of the weakest playoff teams. For me, they're the weakest of the playoff teams. They have not many tools to work with. Ouch. Wow. Okay. Oh, okay. Just kind of like, oh.
Yeah.
But then Benjamin Mora is like, you can even tell just by the way he is not someone that you mess with. Right? It's not even just the tattoos. It's not even just the look, where like he kind of looks like he could be an ex-con, but he kind of also looks like he could be like a cool but strict elementary school teacher or like high school teacher. But also it's just the way that he speaks. He's very suave. He has a certain aura about him. But there's so many things about him that make me feel like, yeah, that's not a guy I want to get into a war of words with. Now I think it's even more justified given how he talked about it afterwards. I love the way that he said, he's like, I'm an elegant professional manager. He was like, I'm not going to speak ill of the other manager. My father always told me other people's opinions don't really matter. It's only about you. But he did say 7-2 is the score, the global score across the 3 games that he's played against Ottawa since he's come in for York. He said 7-2 is the global score. Imagine if we were not weak, what it would be like. Shots fired. Shots returned. That was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what is Carlos Gonzalez thinking? Like, yeah, they're the weakest team. They don't have any tools to work with. You're still only a point ahead of them. You haven't struggled against this team. Like, I don't know what he's trying to prove or anything. It's the most ridiculous thing to come out with. Is make himself look very silly. And I like Mora's way of responding. Just like, just brush it off. What is it?
Yeah.
What an idiot.
Yeah. I think it is maybe him deflecting a little bit. I don't think it's like delusion. I think he is being clever with it. Or at least that's what I choose to look into. But yeah, just Benjamin Mora. Oh my God, he dropped the mic with that one. It felt like I was watching like a rap battle in there. I thought this was like Kendrick against Drake, but like the CPL version with managers. It was crazy. But yeah, now that just adds a little bit more of a tastiness into it, because if York stay 4th and they win the play-in match, basically, then they get to face Atletico Ottawa in the quarterfinals, and then now it gets a little bit spicier. So I don't mind this. I like it. It adds even more drama to an already drama-filled league and league table. So It's great. I love it. I love these antics that sometimes managers get into. It's fantastic, and it sets up a really, really exciting sort of end to the season for both of them. But yeah, it'll be. I mean, it's already been clipped, but it'll be it'll blow up even more if York United finish above Atletico Ottawa in the table.
Oh yeah,
Carlos
definitely.
Gonzalez will never live that down. And also, if York United beat Ottawa in the playoffs,
Yeah.
that karma will be sweet for York United there. But there's so much to look forward to. So much to look forward to in the season. But unfortunately, that is it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast episode. We will be right in the mix all the way until the end of the regular season and into the playoffs. Especially with all of the action that is going on. We're gonna have our eyes peeled for that. But make sure to follow us once again on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC to give us your thoughts on how this season is going to end, maybe even your predictions on who you think will get that 5th place playoff spot. But until next time, I'm Felipe Ojejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.